Hi, Max Brantley with the Arkansas Times on Friday, June the 30th, another week done. Interesting lawsuit filed yesterday in Fayetteville in federal court. It was by two law firms, plaintiffs' law firms, the Thrash Law Firm in Little Rock and the Sheeman Law Firm of Rogers. And it's against major manufacturers of opioids, addictive drugs like OxyContin that have become a health scourge in the United States. The lawsuit's a class action lawsuit under the Deceptive Trade Practices Act. It said that pharmacy companies have misled the public about the benefit of the drug and underplayed some of the dire side effects of the drugs. Said there have been 675 deaths in Arkansas over a 2-year span from overdoses of these drugs. 1.7 million prescriptions written a year in Arkansas for these drugs. Clearly the things have been abused. They're driving some people to cheaper heroin when they can't get their fix on the prescription drugs. It's interesting this lawsuit was filed just before the deadline for any lawsuits, private lawsuits, to be filed under the Deceptive Trade Practices Act. The Arkansas legislature made that illegal going forward in the future, but this lawsuit was filed in time that it can go to trial. It certainly raises an issue of immense public health concern regardless of the outcome. The rest of the world is talking about something that in the great scheme of things perhaps isn't very important, but it gives you an idea of how low our presidency has sunk. And that's a Twitter battle between Donald Trump and Mika Brzezinski and Joe Scarborough on the Morning Joe show on MSNBC. Lots of back and forth. But it took a new dimension today with Scarborough saying that people who worked for Trump had said they could get unflattering stories taken out of a tabloid newspaper, the National Enquirer, if only Joe would apologize to Donald Trump. Well, who knows where all this goes, but there's certainly some more important things to talk about that do directly bear on the presidency. One is this bogus election integrity commission he's set up that's being led by Chris Kobach, a dubious Secretary of State from Kansas, and includes a former Democratic Representative David Dunn of Forest City, now Little Rock, who's on this commission. They've made a sweeping request of all 50 states for the deepest sort of personal information of everybody on every voter roll in the United States, including the whereabouts of military personnel currently. Some of this, the last 4 digits of Social Security numbers, an unprecedented attempt to gather data on everybody in the United States. A scary sort of process. A lot of states are not going along. They're refusing to provide the information. The Secretary of State's office in Arkansas, Mark Martin's office, says so far it hasn't received the request, but Martin is a friend of Chris Kobach. We will see if they're going to go along too. I'm trying to get an answer from David Dunn if he has any idea what he's gotten himself into in this case. And speaking of big issues, more stuff developing on the Russian front. I guess people who back Donald Trump don't care. But the evidence continues to grow about how deeply the Russians got involved in the election and in trying to help Donald Trump. The latest news today comes from the Wall Street Journal, which says that people associated with Trump tried to get hacked Clinton campaign email from the Russians to use and get it in the hands of Mike Flynn, the now disgraced former security chief of the Trump administration. Do we care about Russians trying to influence our elections? I think we should, regardless of who wins and who loses. Bad news out of Texas, where the Texas Supreme Court, which is elected and is mostly composed of Republicans, got spooked by an intense pressure campaign from Republican voters to overturn an earlier decision on whether or not it's legal to give government-subsidized health benefits to same-sex marriage couples. You'd have thought this was open and shut after the U.S. Supreme Court case that legalized same-sex marriage. And recently, in an Arkansas case, said that means everything, if names on birth certificates and everything else. Well, the Texas Supreme Court punted on this. They sent back to the trial court the question of whether something like health insurance benefits are also covered in the landmark same-sex marriage decision. There are some people in Houston that don't want to pay their taxes to people to help people that do things they disapprove of. Arkansas people could be seen to make this same argument, I'm afraid to say. And if we get in a situation where gay people have to sue for every little right that other married couple have, we don't really have much equality, but it depends on the courts, and so there's a lot yet to be developed on this as well. Ron Wyden, a ranking Democrat on the Senate Finance Committee, is interested in ongoing contacts between Arkansas Human Services officials and the head of Medicaid for the federal government. She's been a health services consultant. She did work that if it was not directly for the state, it was for a contractor for the state. And so she's supposed to disclose when she has contact with Arkansas officials. Wyden says it's not clear that she's done that, and this raises ethical questions that he thinks needs to be addressed. Leslie Rutledge, our Attorney General, keeps working on the side of the man and not on the oppressed. Once again, she's joined a handful of states led by the governor of Texas and telling Donald Trump that they'll sue if he doesn't wipe out the last protections for the dreamers, the children who came to the United States as immigrants and have lived here and worked here and have been protected from deportation because of the early age of what they came. These people want to get them out of here too. Although they say doing away with this program wouldn't lead to mass deportation, but I don't know what else it would lead to. There's not much heart out at the Attorney General's office. Late yesterday, Cody Highland, the prosecutor in Conway for 3 counties in Arkansas, including Faulkner County, was named, as we expected, to be Donald Trump's pick to be U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of Arkansas. That will require Senate confirmation. He's an old Republican regular. Also late yesterday, Circuit Judge Alice Gray ruled that Jeff Herweg's past conviction for lying about a traffic accident he was in when he was a Texas police officer makes him ineligible to be Jacksonville police chief, and he said he may no longer hold that position, at least under a temporary restraining order, while the case goes to trial, which she pretty well has decided is going to disqualify him, it would appear from yesterday's ruling. The city wants to appeal. The question is whether being an appointed police chief is holding a public office. The city contends that the Constitution prohibits people who've been convicted of crime from holding elected office, but not necessarily appointed office. Whether it's a good policy for a city to hire as a police chief somebody who's convicted of being a dishonest policeman, well, that's for the Jacksonville voters to decide. And finally, the health care bill. It's still being held up. We don't know what's going to happen on it. It looks like it'd be devastating to people across America if it is passed in anything like its current form. So far, Tom Cotton, who was among 13 white men, Republicans, who wrote the bill, and John Bozeman still won't say anything about it. Tom Cotton says there's nothing on the table to talk about. Well, what was that thing he helped write? If you believe resisting this kind of representation is a good thing to do, well, by all means, give them a call and resist. I'm Max Brantley. I'll be back next week.